There we go. Good evening. I'm Jennifer Halligan. I'm with 45 North Group, and we're working on behalf of the City of Osseo for project management for this project. So my job is to have oversight of the project budget, schedule, and make sure that the objectives are being met. The first slide that I have here is talking about the team that we've assembled. And the project is broken up into three parts. There's the core and shell of the building and the site, which means the parking lot. The shell is the exterior wall of the building, and the core is the inside of the building. And for that, we have the City of Osseo is responsible for that work. 45 North Group for project management. Teal and Green is the architect and also structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design. WSB are the engineers, the civil engineer on the project. HVS is doing the building security, and Element is on the team for IT. There's the Cannabis dispensary, which is one half of the building, and Vogageur Cannabis Services is providing oversight for the design and management of that. And then Wolf's Drafting and Design is doing the design and documents for the dispensary. And then we have Tenant A, which is the brewery, and they are managing the design and construction of their space. So this drawing talks about the design and construction responsibilities, and the orange colors are what is City of Osseo responsibilities. The green outline over the right side of the space, that's the dispensary. And then Tenant A is shown as blue. So the orange responsibilities for Osseo are the design and construction of the core and shell and site, demolition of the interior of the building and detached garages, exterior wall modifications, which are new openings, primarily for the brewery, 3 big garage door openings, infill of other windows and doors that will not be needed, and a refresh of the appearance. There's boards at the back, and then Brian will show what the exterior of the building is going to look like. It's going to be a really nice improvement to it. The shingle mansard roof will be removed, and the building stucco will be painted and look really good. Also for Osseo is the construction build-out of the Cannabis dispensary and the secure delivery area, also known as a garage. Osseo is building restrooms for A, utility upgrades and infrastructure. There'll be adequate mechanical ventilation, new rooftop units, 3-phase power, and water supply, so the water to the building will be upgraded as well. Parking lot is getting repaved and restriped, so that'll be a really nice refresh look to that. And then there's a patio alongside the west side of the Tenant A space, so that'll be a nice place for people to sit outside and enjoy the space. Vogageur responsibilities, so that's, as I said, the green border around the dispensary space. They're responsible for the design and oversight of the Cannabis dispensary to ensure that Office of Cannabis Management requirements are being met. And then the blue space is the other half of the building, and that will be Tenant A, and they are managing their design and construction cost of the interior of that. The project schedule, since I've been on in February and through April, we did site due diligence where we did soil borings and a site survey and hazardous material assessment and abatement as needed. And then into May, we did design and documentation. The existing garages and the interior of the building were demolished. We did these ahead of time so that we would be able to foresee any unforeseen circumstances that you get into when you start demolishing the interior of a building. June and July, the building went in for permit, and we went out for public bid for general contractor services. And we're proposing that construction is August through November, and that the dispensary is open for business November and December. Tenant A might be a little later than that. I'm not sure what their schedule's gonna be for opening, but it should be shortly after that. And this is the project budget. I have it broken out into the total cost and then broken out by City of Osseo and the dispensary. And there's different sections. There's construction, professional services, which is things like the architecture fees, 45 North Group fees, hazardous material surveys and abatement and things like that. Furniture and equipment, that's self-explanatory. Technology is things like the IT network, and if there's audio-visual and security, cameras and card readers. And then contingency, which we have at 8% now. It's come down a little bit as we're getting more information on the project, but it's still a good conservative amount. And so the total construction cost is $1,591,050. $427,000 of that is the dispensary, and $1,164,050 is the City of Osseo. And take in mind that some of these costs are still estimates. These are not everything's been bid out yet, so there will be some fluctuation on this, but we did get a bid from a general contractor, so our construction cost is good for the construction of the building. Professional services total cost is $294,090. $60,500 is the dispensary. $233,590 is the City of Osseo responsibility. Furniture and equipment, $324,400 total. Most of this cost is in the dispensary with cases for the sales floor and furniture for the office and break room. City of Osseo, $30,000 for furniture and equipment only there. Technology, all these costs right now are under the dispensary. This is the security and the IT and a little bit of AV, display monitors in the dispensary, $200,791. And contingency is spread out over the dispensary, City of Osseo, totaling $200,000. So total project cost for the dispensary is less than, it's not the $4 million. The dispensary itself is $1,062,691. The money that Osseo is putting into the redevelopment of the building is $1,547,640. And total project cost to date is $2,610,331.
These are estimates.
Thank you. My name is Brian Anderson. I'm with Thielen and Green, one of the architectural partners for the project. And just to walk through the overall design, we're starting with the site design where we're redeveloping the parking lot to the north and the west side. And we're adding sidewalks around the north and the west side of the building to connect to the existing city sidewalks on the east and the south side. Additionally, on the west side of the building, we're adding a patio that would be accessed through the heavy rotation brewery. On that side of the building, as Jennifer mentioned, we have tall overhead garage doors to open up to the space, in addition to swinging doors that would access the space. We're changing the entries to the north side of the building as we're kind of flipping how the building is accessed. So we're no longer accessing from the south side or the east side of streets. We're on the north side, where we're on the parking lot. We've added sidewalks, and we're adding canopies over each entry over the entry for each tenant to provide a focal feature, provide lighting for when it's dark, and provide some protection from the rain. The building itself, we're utilizing the stucco that's already there. We're going to have to patch and repair where needed. We know that the mansard roof is going to come off, and we'll have to see what the condition of the exterior wall system is once we remove that. But we want to keep what's there. And so we're taking the approach to paint that existing stucco surface. We're going with a two-tone paint with an angular design at the corners. And then we'll have black accent colors throughout the building, be it the doors, the windows, the garage doors, to include bollards around the patio and the railing around the patio, the entry canopies, and the metal cap at the top of the building. In essence, we're just trying to keep it to a simple color palette. And in addition, around the, to play off of the two-tone paint, we've added some up-down lighting on the exterior of the building that will play off the angular transition between the two colors. We have added a decorative neon band of light around the top of the building. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at some building signage where we're going to have, for the dispensary, we'll have potentially two signs, one at the south and one at the north. And the heavy rotation, they will have their own signage package. So we're not showing that here. And we're looking at doing a roof sign. And in general, that covers the exterior improvements to the building. Thank you.
Mentioned.
I know there've been a lot of questions about what it's going to look inside, or just kind of the overall feel of the store. Right now, these are some of the selections that we have made. We're looking to do kind of an elevated industrial design for the space, kind of playing off of what the building already has. Inside the store, there's black ceiling, metal pieces, and so we're going to continue that with black steel throughout. Warm wood will be honing the concrete, kind of giving it a polished concrete look, and a palette of green colors, make it more natural. Those are colors that will tie into what they're doing for the exterior of the building to make it look really nice and professional for the space. And then I know there have been a lot of thoughts about the logo and the use of the water tower. I think someone at the last meeting said it was lazy. I promise that it was a very purposeful choice for us and for, I believe, the people who want this project to go through. The purpose of this dispensary is to build an asset for your community, right? All the revenue that will come from this will be put back into your community, put back into the city of Osseo to be used to do new programs, to make changes, positive changes in your community. That is our goal for the store. And I know some people might find that hard to believe, but that is the truth. We will have a secure entry point for the sales floor, and the overall signage and branding will fit kind of the downtown feel, and then nothing is going to be designed to appeal to minors. That was another concern that was brought up. Nothing will be designed to appeal to minors. And it will not be a smoke shop. It'll be a professional space that the city owns, that the community can be proud of. Great.
Yeah, so, in the previous council meeting, there was some discussion around some of the projections, some of the financial projections. So this, I think, is an important kind of caveat that's specific to municipal dispensaries, and it kind of gives them a leg up versus their private operators. And what that is the 280E federal income tax. So if you can see, on the left here is a traditional cannabis retailer, and on the right is a municipal dispensary, same revenue, same cost of goods sold, but where they differ is private or traditional cannabis retailers, they get hit with a 280E federal income tax off of their gross profit. So it's the only thing that they can deduct from a business standpoint is the cost of goods sold, and then they are hit with around a 21% tax on that $2 million number, opposed to the Osseo Municipal Dispensary, Anoka, and any other dispensary. They don't have that same burden, and it allows them to do typical business deductions such as wages, marketing, utilities, things of that nature. So keep that in mind when we are kind of going through some of these projections, because that is something that is unique to this store, and I think it does make a difference, as you can see down here by the net income, more than doubles that of a traditional retailer. And again, these are kind of just numbers for illustrative purposes, but. And again, this is kind of in response to some of the other questions from the last meeting, and I know there was a lot of questions around our statewide projections. So I guess one thing worth noting there is that was from one of our presentations in 2024. Since then, the state actually delayed the rollout of the licenses for almost a full year, so that obviously does impact year one, year two projections. And in 2024 we had year one projections of 418 million. The most recent OCM projections that they have for this year is 430 million. So again, right in that ballpark. Another question was kind of around the hypothesis that we had that medicinal users would go down. Again, there was some changes to the statute since our presentation. In March 2025, they changed the laws for medical marijuana patients, where it went from having to apply every year annually and pay a fee to now just once every 3 years, and they removed the fee. So it is impossible for those numbers to go down, but it is kind of worth calling out that we have seen this year adult use is trending up. It's kind of tough to see on this specific graph, but medical, despite the users remaining flat to slightly increasing, the sales are going down, which is in line with what we suspected to happen as more people kind of transition to adult use. And I think there was another question around kind of our average order value. We were conservative there. In that model, we used $50 average basket size or order value. Nationals around $54, and Minnesota year to date is in the $67 range. And so this is again our year one kind of pro forma that we touched on. Kind of shows what we think the store will do from a revenue standpoint. Again, this is kind of a high level overview, with the end result being just over $600,000 to the city of Osseo, which ideally can be reinvested back into the community. Year one. And then there also were some, questions or comments around, some other markets, what has happened in the cannabis industry in other states. Each, state kind of has their own laws and statutes that they implement, which have seen, varying levels of results. Kind of to help illustrate this, we have two sides of the extreme, which is Michigan, which I know was referenced in the council presentation. They have quite the oversupply. There's over 1,000 cultivators or growers, which kind of in turn led to a race to the bottom for average price per pound. And then you compare that to someone like Missouri, where they have a hard cap on not just cultivators but also retail licenses as well. In Minnesota, we're somewhere in the middle. Not gonna sugarcoat it and say it's been the smoothest statewide rollout, but more cultivators and more manufacturers are coming online, but at the moment there is a lot of demand and not a ton of supply. And this kind of just illustrates that. So this compares the Minnesota versus Michigan number of licenses and license types. Calling out here with adult use, there's only 12 straight retailer licenses that have been issued, but there have been over 200 micro licenses. And the big call out there being the cultivators, where there's over 1,000 in Michigan, opposed to a statewide cap here in Minnesota of 50. Yeah, and there also were some questions around municipalities and the percentage, I guess, of municipalities that apply for a license. It's worth calling out that they were treated for all intents and purposes the same as a private retailer would have been, where they had the same 2-week window where they could apply, and if they missed that window, they were no longer eligible. There have been other cities who have, they're looking to get into this, but the OCM has not indicated when they'll open up kind of the next application window. Yeah, and this is kind of more of an operational standpoint to kind of see how the flow of the relationship would work. From the banking standpoint, it will be a city-owned account, obviously. Everything going to the city, no commingling of funds. We are just an authorized user. We will present the city with a budget, and we can operate within that budget, and anything outside of that budget, we will need city approval. Reporting, this whole project we would like to be as transparent as possible, so there will be monthly reporting, expense detail, things that not just that we present to the council, but as citizens that we would like to include you as well, so as transparent as possible. Yeah, and there were some other questions around shelling of minors. So this is kind of what that process looks like. I'm not sure if everyone here has been to a dispensary, but as soon as you walk in, the lobby is kind of partitioned off, and there is that age check at the door. Very similar to, I guess, getting into a liquor store or like a bar where they scan your ID, they make sure your ID is valid. And
you can't even enter the store until you show that you have a valid ID, that you're over 21. So you will not be able to enter into where anything is being sold until you show that.
Yeah, and there are daily limits that are set by the state for how much one person can buy per day. Seed to sale tracking, that is every single product that is sold in a store is able to be tracked back to the specific harvest or grow that it came from, and that is monitored by Metric is the name of the company, and that's used by I think 28 states in total. They're kind of the standard, so it's very regulated, and also dual control and cache security. There will be things like smart safes that we will be implementing, as well as cash couriers and armor pickup. High level, this is again kind of the timeline that we are on. Ideally, we will have the November launch. And as Jennifer touched on, I know that's a kind of a headline grabber there, but this is a citywide redevelopment project, not just all of that, bond, if you will, going towards the dispensary. And our build out costs, I guess, hasn't changed a ton, but and just real quick, some frequently asked questions. We kind of touched on the IDs. This is not an on-site consumption. There's no smoking or consumption anywhere on the premises. Because of that, there shouldn't be an odor, but there also will be filtration systems and things inside the store. Security and crime. Kind of touched on security earlier, and
All right, and here we are, this is the last section of the presentation. So we're just going to walk through kind of some of the options the city has considered, and we'll talk about what each option means financially, and
how those could support community needs. I'll also take a minute to try to explain a little bit of how tax abatement works and show that it does play a key role in how we manage this process. So some things to keep in mind along the way. The city does aim to reduce reliance on property taxes. That is the ultimate high-level goal. Bond payments come from general fund, but those can often be offset. Each option affects long-term financial stability, and community support and strategic alignment do matter, and there's a need to balance those concerns with responsible planning. So option one, we could start with proceed as planned. Open the press room by December 2026. As we went through these presentations, we're using this $3 million cost estimate right now, but as Jennifer showed us on our most recent budget, right now that's about 2.6. So that's to keep in mind where $4 million came from. That was the high water mark to begin the process of looking into the bond. And then one of the pros here is that we have existing plans already in place, which have been presented here. The revenue expected is expected to cover the first bond payment, which is due in 2028. So that gives the business a full year of running and being able to predict some of those costs and seeing how those trends over a full year before the first bond payment is due. But we acknowledge that there is public concern and some perceived long-term revenue uncertainty, so that's what we're looking to address. Second option is sell the building as is. We purchased the building for about $730,000. So if we sold it today in its demolished state, it would be worth less than $730,000. So you could say that might avoid further spending. However, we are contractually obligated to finish out a space for a brewery to go in that building. So there would be some issues there, along with just a loss of redevelopment and potential revenue. The third option is 2 tenant spaces. We could do separate spaces for a brewery and then just a second tenant. The estimated lease income would be about $94,000 per year. This appeals to residents mostly who are just happen to be opposed to a dispensary. But to point out here, the lease on income does not cover what the bond payment would be, so it doesn't have that extra added revenue. And then there's some additional construction costs that have to do, especially with the highest ticket items tend to be the restrooms. So depending on what type of use that is, it's about $40,000 to $60,000. That's actually per bathroom. It's, you could say, I think the construction term is per hole, but it's, each bathroom, each fixture. And then option 4, we could do a brewery and a community center. That was something that was brought up. Revenue, that would be at about $47,000 per year, plus any community center rentals. This would help free up space in City Hall. It would make for a small community center. Again, the higher restroom and building costs, considering this would also be now off-site from the main City Hall campus, this would also require staffing increases. And then the other thing to point out here is, of course, that this does not create revenue that is sufficient to make those bond payments either. So again, as we are walking through some of these numbers, I want to keep in mind that we're trying to use some round numbers here just to really illustrate what it is we're looking at. So an example of a 2028 financial situation, we could have a bond payment due of about approximately $350,000. We could have rental income around $47,000 and net dispensary revenue of about $600,000. So that would put revenue back to the general fund in the amount of about $303,000. And now bringing property tax abatement into the conversation. So property tax abatement directs tax revenue from specific parcels to go and pay the bond. So for example, we have our TIF district that is 5 Central, right behind me here. And this was finished the TIF obligations quite a bit early. So this brings tax revenue from those existing parcels back, return into flow into the general fund. So combined with lease income, the funds from those parcels could potentially cover the bonds. And so we just have some estimates here of about $200,000 of that parcel tax revenue, about $47,000 of lease income, and a bond payment of $350,000. So how those two things work together is the last piece of this. So dispensary revenue complements abatement because, as we said, property tax abatement uses revenue from specific parcels to secure the bond. So even though we're using the abatement is secured by the bond, is secured by those parcels. The city's intention is to use the proceeds or revenue from the dispensary as opposed to those parcels. So with 5 Central District closed, we've got parcel revenue beginning to flow back into the general fund. And then we have dispensary revenue plus the parcel tax revenue together, and those strengthen the overall ability to pay that bond. So again, just kind of looking at some round numbers here. Parcel revenue of about $200,000, dispensary revenue of about $600,000, and a bond payment of $350,000. So we would have combined about $800,000 that would be available for that $350,000 bond payment. Some things to kind of bring this all back together. Again, the city's long-term strategy is always looking for ways to identify revenue sources that can reduce reliance on property taxes. Bond payments do flow through the general fund, and revenue changes in the general fund do not automatically raise property taxes. Closed TIF districts help to support the general fund, and each option has different financial impacts. But the goal is to kind of balance these public concerns with as responsible planning as we can complete. So at this point in the meeting, we will move on to the public Q&A portion of the meeting. So anyone who would like to speak can come up to this microphone right here. I ask that you please just put your name on this purple clipboard that Felicia has. This is just so that we can take some accurate minutes for anyone who wasn't able to attend tonight, if they'd like to make sure that they make it into that record. Please be as brief as you can, as long as you get a chance to say what you can, what you came to say. And we just ask that you remain respectful and constructive.
Of course.
Thank you very much.